Thank you, Ms. Mariana. Great to be here at NPM Salon again. I will put a link here in the chat so you guys can all follow along with me. At Continuum Market, we are vetting blockchain brands that are operating in North America, specifically so that my cousins, who are very smart engineers and things on that line, but still have no idea what I'm talking about when I speak on blockchain, even after 5 years, we want them to be able to have a trusted list of not only blockchain brands for them to select their own individual participation, but also so that we can help foster partnerships, cross collaboration, event speaking opportunities, really measuring the credibility, trust, and adoption behind these blockchain brands. So we have in our event calendar, which is essentially, we joke at Continuum, this is the time-space continuum, the calendar. We will never be here again. We are constantly moving forward. And so if you can set things in the future, predict them, and anticipate them, you can respond a lot more effectively. So at Continuum Market, our event calendar, it is primarily focused on conferences and speaking opportunities, but there's also things in there like what's coming up tomorrow, where Gary Gensler is going to be testifying in a Senate hearing. So those type of things that we're watching in the industry from the 4 quadrants at Continuum. So we have Main Street, Blockchain Street, Wall Street, and Capitol Hill crossover. Really, we're looking to set the baseline for the next decade of innovation through this industry. So with our event calendar, you guys can see that there's some things that are coming up rather quickly. We have been pulled into quite a few speaker curation opportunities. So if you're a brand looking for more exposure, please give us a call. We can put you through the vetting process and then get you out to our community. The events that are happening at the end of this month are pretty interesting. If you're going to be near Vegas, Mobile World Con, which is basically the at least North America, and if not global, summit for mobile tech is happening. So T-Mobile and folks like that are really starting to pay attention to blockchain, own your data, metaverse crossover, things like that. I was just on a panel at Gatherverse yesterday. As I mentioned, we've got the SEC hearing that's coming up tomorrow. I'm working with Reactify for NFT Seattle that's coming up at the end of this month. GBA, which is Government Blockchain Association, is very focused on Capitol Hill. That's happening September 29th and 30th in DC. The big other Capitol Hill event that we're looking at and that we've been asked to help curate is the South Carolina Blockchain Conference. That is going to have speakers like Hester Peirce, Tom Emmers, Dina Ellis from Paul Hastings, Bates Group, who is a huge US compliance vendor at Continuum Market. And all of the people that are vetted through Continuum Market are available for warm intros. So if you're a new brand coming into Continuum, we joke that it's kind of like throwing gasoline on your campfire. Coming into Continuum, we're going to help you go a lot faster with whatever your initiatives are. The other big thing to let everyone know here is that there is a massive influx of Web 2 coming into Web 3. They need to know their trusted brands as well. Along with that Web 2 influx is a massive crossover to the celebrity and entertainment industry. So if you have a focus on music, movies, athletes, anything along those lines, they're all getting involved in Web 3. And then, of course, we have the Vegas October week that's happening. So that's going to be coin agendas with Bit Angels, the Litecoin Summit. That's all happening. As soon as we get done in Vegas, we go to Jamaica for Tech with Soul. We have an amazing partnership with Tech with Soul that crosses over to all angles of technology. And the crossover in the last few weeks of applied tech in blockchain, along with the representatives at Tech with Soul, is a very big deal. So we're actually working with Tech with Soul for the CES 2023 that's also happening in Vegas the first week of January. That is a monster partnership for allowing the real world to understand the impact of blockchain technologies. We have some pretty big speakers, and if you're interested to be at CES, please let me know so I can get you guys in sooner than later. Mariana and the NPM Salon Network is a trusted vendor within Continuum as well. So Tech with Soul for sure, if you guys are looking at that, that's a massive exposure to Main Street and Capitol Hill as well. The other one to let you guys know about for sure is the Draper Goren Home LA Blockchain Summit, or Labs as we call it. That is happening November in LA. That's probably one of the biggest ones in the industry. So if you guys can make it out for that, I know Mariana is usually at those events. I'm usually at those events. And as we go through, November and December, things are going to be very busy. But pretty much the entire industry kind of wraps up in Miami at the end of the year. So the first week of December in Miami is going to be Art Basel, along with 3 or 4 other very big conferences that all kind of happen within those same timeframes. So definitely want to plug you guys into that. Does anyone have any questions so far? Because I tend to go pretty fast.
I think it's awesome. It is virtually humanly impossible to keep track of all of the different relevant, conferences in the space. And you're doing such a good job. And you're also covering, I think, angles that not everyone is covering, like the regulatory angle, which is really important and will set sort of the pace for the development. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. So how, in terms of the media partnership that you formed, will you have some sort of discount tickets, or will you have some sort of free streaming tickets that maybe we could share with the community? That would be helpful too.
Certainly. So we have partnerships with the event producers themselves. I get pulled into a lot of things since, we're out there saying that we're vetting these companies and we have a pretty strict vetting process. So if you need anything specifically, I'm happy to connect you guys to the event producers. That's where your homie hookups usually come from. And by saying that you're part of Continuum, you kind of get grandfathered into a whole bunch of fun things, including our deal flow room, which we call collective intelligence. So at these events, sometimes brands want to be in a booth. Sometimes that's a time lock, and that's not the way that they want to handle the event. So we offer a lot of alternatives. And for those of you that do attend industry events, you'll learn that the deal flow doesn't happen on the floor at the booth side of it. It happens at the networking afterwards, and it happens at the dinners and the deal flow rooms, and access to people that, it's taken me 5 years to have access and trust with them. So if you're coming with us at Continuum, we kind of drag you with us to those deal flow rooms as well. So a lot of Continuum is about access and being able to amplify what you're already doing in your blockchain project. We didn't want to pick just one. We are an amalgamation of the entire industry, and we back it up with data and analytics that show your month over month growth, so that it's not just Christina from Continuum saying that she likes you. There's actually real data out in the ecosystem that we gather together in one place to support you in your blockchain journey. This is applicable from anything as small as a startup that started yesterday to big giant corporations like FTX and Coinbase, all of these metaverse companies, these NFT companies. If there's a blockchain angle, we want to talk to you at Continuum, confirm that you're safe for US consumers, and then champion the heck out of you.
We had a very interesting discussion yesterday with one of the companies I've been advising for a long time, that I would like sort of run by you, since you're the regulatory, pulse expert. The land sales in metaverse, right? There's like a real issue, because I work with a company that can literally put a media file on chain and track everything around it. You can track metadata, and you can track basically any sort of ownership of that media, provenance, et cetera, et cetera. But if you put land ownership as media onto their protocol, all of a sudden, if you have a rev share associated with that land ownership, that's a red flag for sort of a security offering. So have you seen any progress in that area, as we build the metaverse, basically?
Yes. So I think that we're going to end up running into the metaverse the same way we run into the blockchain, right? People think it's just an amalgamation. But each individual brand has its own set of regulations behind it based on how they're using the tech. So to summarize what Mariana's saying and to kind of say it slightly different, Basically, within the metaverse, you're dealing with digital assets in a very data sticky ecosystem. It's one of the perks and one of the withdrawals if you don't understand data literacy and own your data standards that are kind of sovereign in Web3. So what you're actually talking about is the ownership of digital assets. Now, for the most part, at the lowest end of the spectrum, we treat digital assets similar to Chuck E. Cheese coins. If it's happening within the four walls of the ecosystem and that asset lives there and the ownership of that asset lives there within the four walls and cannot be taken out of the four walls, that is treated as a Chuck E. Cheese token. The moment that that Chuck E. Cheese token has real value, say you could use that token to walk across the street and buy real cheese, that is where Capitol Hill gets really upset about things because there's all kinds of taxable situations. And when it comes to real estate, even digital real estate, there's already a regulation infrastructure there. So what you're looking at with your assets, when you purchase them, there's no like trigger for it, but when you sell it, they become taxable. And if you're generating revenue off of it, technically that revenue is taxable also. So there's at Capitol Hill, there's always a blue versus red side, but there's always a pro versus con side as well. So there's some folks that are, saying, let them play, let the technologists do what they need to do with the ones and zeros. Let's see what happens. Let's see if it impacts the economy. Then there's other folks that are very con against it, saying, no, that's going to mess up the global economic engine and how we currently make money. You can't do that without getting these certain check marks. And that's what the SEC is really pushing hard on, is saying, listen, if you're going to do lending, you need to do all the regulation for lending. There's no one-stop shop here. If you're doing 6 or 7 different things that fall within regulation, you need those 6 or 7 regulation confirmations. So essentially right now, blockchain brands have the leniency to do what you need to do to develop. Technologists certainly are not waiting for clarification. They're just forging ahead. And so I'm on the side of the blockchain technologist. I want them to be able to forge ahead. And if they start running into securities issues or regulated asset issues, we want to help hold them by the hand and say, not only is this what Continuum knows, but here is access to all of our auditors, our compliance officers, all of the people that we listen to, that we gather information from, including the lawyers that are willing to push back against legislation and policymakers and actually change laws. So if you're at that level where you're ready to go to the doorstep of Capitol Hill and you want an army behind you, please call me at Continuum. I have a whole bunch of resources ready to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this particular issue, when you think about it, internet address, the URL, is kind of how the internet was built out. And in the metaverse, it's the land. It's not very different than having a URL. And yet, because it's there's a land name attached to it, we have to deal with all of these issues, which to me is fascinating in itself.
100%. And I'll tell you that from a data perspective, since everyone has nicknamed me Christina, Data Points Bruhan, and all I do is talk about data, keep in mind that URL is very similar to the geolocation. So everyone's going to start talking about geolocation very soon in metaverse and in real life. And when you're talking about selling that geolocation, right now we're talking about plots of land. But I'm working with metaverse companies that are talking about selling entire planets and having entire commodity infrastructures within their metaverse. So that moves us into a new category that's called in-game currency. And in-game currency is already closely regulated, mostly with a blind eye. But it is a significant factor that's already there. So if you can demonstrate kind of the next level up from that Chuck E. Cheese token, that you are an in-game currency, that puts you in a different category than if you are, for example, using the metaverse to actually sell real in-life plots of real estate, which is another thing that I'm aware is happening. Basically, lots and lots of crossover, and the technologists are not waiting for approval. So eventually they're going to hit a wall. And we believe at Continuum that wall is actually going to happen in January of 2023. We expect to see more stablecoin regulation announcements happen throughout September. In October, there will be new regulation announced that is going to be really targeting bad actors and kind of creating this negative sentiment around, you can't trust crypto because of all these bad actors. And in January, after they get through the midterms, but in January, they're going to be rolling out regulation in a nutshell that says if you already exist, fine, you need to retroactively go back and get these check marks from the compliance side of it. If you are coming into it in the future, don't trust these mom and pop blockchain brands. You should trust JP Morgan and Citadel and Bank of America. You should trust their blockchain products. And that to me is terrifying. That's the exact opposite of what we would want to see in the industry, because we know that Bank of America does not protect our data. We know that they're involved in scandal after scandal after scandal. And a lot of that has to do with their clout in the global economic engine. Tends to be what policymakers and Capitol Hill look at the most. So if your brand is making money, great. We're excited for you. Continuum. You have also just crossed a threshold where you're now on the radar of the U.S. regulation government regulation side. So if you have any questions around any of this, we've created a framework at Continuum to tell you where your risk factors are. And to remediate those risk factors, we have resources that are ready to go right this moment, standing by, because this is a problem for every single blockchain brand I talk to, no matter what they're doing.